Okay, let me know when my 30 seconds is ready. Okay, good morning. Would we all please stand for the invocation provided by Commissioner Barr, and then we'll follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we say thank you for this beautiful morning, this opportunity to serve others. Lord, guide us and direct us today as we deliberate and that we just work together in a fashion that would honor and glorify and serve you as we serve our fellow citizens. Lord, we pray for safety and direction for our EMS and operations, particularly this time of year with the ice, the cold weather, the impending snow that's coming. Lord, just watch over them, protect them, give them guidance, give them fortitude. We just pray these things in thy precious name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to call the January 16th, 2018 Washington County Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. With that, we will not be doing the approval of the minutes this week. We'll do those next week, and we'll jump down to Commissioner reports and comments, starting with Commissioner Kiefer.
Nothing today.
Commissioner Klein.
No comments today.
Good.
Okay. For myself, I'd just like to thank the town of Hancock for, we went to their meeting last week, and thank them for what they're doing for our veterans up there in their community. They've had flags all printed up with pictures of their veterans from their community so that they're not forgotten, and they hang those periodically throughout the year on the poles that they've installed. So I just want to thank the town of Hancock for that initiative and everything they've done to remember our veterans. Thank you. Reports from county staff. We have any staff here that would care to report in the chambers? Okay.
Commissioners, I have two items.
Attorneys.
If you recall, there was a rezoning application that was before the commissioners concerning the former Conococheague School. It was designated as case number RZ 17-009. The applicant was asking that the zoning, which is currently on the property, which is RV, Rural Village, be changed to RB, Rural Business. It was a consensus of the commissioners to approve that rezoning. The formal documentation to approve it and effectuate the rezoning has been prepared, namely an ordinance to amend the zoning map for Washington County, Maryland, and then the decision and findings of fact, which are, of course, incorporated therein as required by the ordinance. So at this time, it will be appropriate to grant the requested classification and adopt the ordinance and the decision.
So moved.
A motion, a second for the approval of that ordinance. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. And also related to that property, the county has advertised through the real property administrator notice that the property was going to be conveyed because it's no longer needed for a public purpose. That has been advertised in the Herald Mail as required by the Code of Public Local Laws, and it is appropriate at this time to adopt an ordinance to declare certain real property as surplus property and to approve the conveyance of the property to the prospective purchaser.
So moved.
Motion, a second for that approval. Any further discussion?
Question. I understand this still has to go before the Board of Public Works in Annapolis. Is that another next step or another step? Is that?
It was taken before the Board of Public Works on October 4th.
Okay, so that's behind us. Okay, I understand.
But these school properties, when they are conveyed, do have to receive the blessing of the Board of Public Works.
Okay. I just didn't know what sequence that took place.
This was the last step, and we close next Friday at 11 in the morning.
Okay. Well, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. County administrators.
Thank you, sir. Couple things for you. First, there's no meeting January 23rd. That's next Tuesday. I'd like to thank the emergency services folks, our Chief Operating Officer, Jim Hovis here, Public Relations and Marketing, Danielle Crabb, and the scores of volunteer fire and rescue folks that have served the community over the past several days. This started on Saturday. If memory serves correct, the communication back and forth has been fantastic. The services and the efforts of those folks involved has been fantastic, looking out for the safety, security, and well-being of people that may be affected. So thank you very much to them and the communication that still continues today. With that, I need to encourage people to stay off the ice. Please. We actually have had a few reports of people on that ice, which is incredibly dangerous and needs to be completely advised not to be anywhere near that ice, as it is unknown. Which really goes for any ice around the county at this time. I don't think we've had enough cold weather to assure that any ice is stable enough to be encroaching upon of any sort. Speaking of ice, there is an evening meeting tonight in Funkstown. There is pending weather, and I wanted to remind everyone that any cancellations, postponements, or closures will be made in effect with the per the policy that Washington County has in place. So, as of now, there is an evening meeting in Funkstown, and until otherwise noted.
Thank you, Mr. Slocum. Mr. Hovis?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Boards and commissions? Okay, Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchase 18-001 on vehicle
I believe we
video
have
surveillance.
Citizen participation.
I did have that scratched out. Let's back up, sorry. Citizens participation. We have any citizens here today to care to participate? Just please come forward, state your name and address, please. How are you two today?
Pretty well. And yourself? Morning.
Good, good, thank you.
Ladies. Gary Rohr, Washington County Government retired battlefield guide, and Tom Clemens. I live in Keedysville and
Welcome.
Retired from HCC.
Did you give your address, Mr. Roy?
Address is 19818 Marcia Court, Boonesboro, Maryland.
Thank you.
P.O. Box 193, Keedysville.
Thank you. I see that the retirement's good to you.
It's on who you hang out with.
There you go.
Recommend it. Gentlemen, we are not on your formal agenda, and we realize time is limited, but we did put together just 5 slides for your benefit, and I have some pictures to leave with you. 2.5 years ago, Tom and I were among the noisemakers from the battlefield that were very concerned about what is known as the Keedysville Road over Antietam Creek. We refer to it as Hit Bridge, or as the Armies called it at the time of the battle, the Upper Bridge. It's the 8th stone arch bridge built in Washington County, and it was built in 1830. It's 188 years old, and I think Scott Hobbs can bring you up to date on the timing, but I think it's one of your bridges that's in queue for complete restoration of a program we started about 20 years ago. It was built in 1830 for $1,413.66. They want you to know about 66. Anyway, on with the issue. We were really upset and very concerned for the potential loss of the bridge through flood damage and debris. And I brought some before and after pictures in, and Tom and I wanted to come in and formally thank you publicly for what you did as a county government and our elected body to see that that bridge was cleaned up and protected. So we'll see, that's what it looks like now. That's a downstream picture looking upstream. This is what it looked like before you cleaned it out. I believe it was back in the fall, wasn't it, Rob? Somewhere around September timeframe. That's an even closer shot. And I don't know if this has a laser on it. I don't think it does. Anyway, as you can see on up in that barrel, you'll see a lot of heavy debris up in there. That's a close-up. And this is that same shot I just showed you from downstream. Going to the next one, this is upstream. This is standing on the Keedysville side, high on the bridge, looking across. Gentlemen, there was probably, in my estimation, about 100 tons of debris in there had built up over the years. That's standing on the bridge looking upstream, so you can see how extensive. That's what it looks like today, thanks to the efforts of county government to clean it out. And the delay was with a power line that goes overhead. That's the same area, looking at it from the west side, looking towards Keedysville. And you couldn't get equipment in there, but your public works folks used some very innovative means to get out on there on the stream. And again, that same picture from above the bridge looking upstream. And today, this is what it looks like. I apologize for the glare, but we're shooting into the sun. We just want to say thank you. We very much appreciate it. As you know, I've always been a strong advocate and promoter of our stone arch bridges, and we're very proud of them. And people come from all over the world, literally, on our tours, and they just marvel at these stone structures, and we want to thank you for protecting this one.
And speaking of bridges, we've heard that the state highway folks are going to build a new bridge on Route 68 over Beaver Creek. And that's another stone arch bridge, but we recognize that there's a lot of traffic and safety concerns there. And so we understand that this needs to be changed. We would like you all to encourage the state to not put in a standard steel and concrete bridge, but maybe put some stone parapets on it and make it look like one of the old bridges. They did a fine job with the one on Burnside Bridge Road, and I think it'd be really terrific if we could encourage them to do the same thing there on 68. That's another historic part of our county, and I think Gary's comments are right on target, that people who come in here as tourists and want to marvel at what we've preserved here and spend their money and then leave ought to be encouraged, and this is one of the things that I think they like to see. So if we could make that bridge look as historic as it possibly could, but recognizing that it needs to go to 2 lanes and all that. Also, and this is probably in their mind too, but as you probably know, a lot of people put in canoes and kayaks and fishing boats and whatever there and go under that bridge. And so make sure the state puts it high enough that not only will the flood requirements be met, but also people can still use it for recreation. Thank you.
Anything else to add?
Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to share this with you. I have some pictures I'm going to leave with you. I don't need them back. These are from 2.5 years ago. It's a graphic of what we just talked about in the after views. So thank you again, and have a good day.
Okay, we have any other citizens here today care to participate? Okay, I don't see any. Citizens' participation is closed, and we'll move to the Intergovernmental Cooperative Purchase Vehicle Video Surveillance System. Ms. Noggle and Mr. Cerrone, how are you two today?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
Good morning, everyone. The recommendation before you is for the intergovernmental cooperative purchase of on-vehicle video surveillance system for the Washington County Transit Department. I move to authorize by resolution the purchase and installation of 22 on-vehicle video surveillance systems from IVS, doing business as Angle Tracks out of Dothan, Alabama, at the cost of $83,579.54. The pricing is based on a Harford County, Maryland contract. This contract is contingent upon this company being registered in good standing and authorized with the state of Maryland through the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation, and remaining so through the duration of the contract. This contract will benefit the county as a direct cost savings because of the leverage that the economies of scale this buying group puts forth. I'm confident that even a bid solicited through the county would exceed the spend savings that we're going to get through this Hartford County contract. The funds were budgeted through the Washington County Transit Department in their CIP account in the amount of $160,000.
Okay, any questions, commissioners? What percentage of the transit budget is provided by is it the federal government, state government?
For capital purchases such as this, it's 80% by Fed, 10% state, 10% local. Operating is 50% federal, up to 25% state and 25% local.
So this request, 10% of its, or 25% of its?
10% is local, correct.
Okay, any other questions?
Question, is this the monitor on the bus itself or exterior of the bus? Or both?
This program will do both. Initially, when we pursued this, and this goes back about 3-4 years now when we started this process, it was only interior cameras. And the way they're designed today, as an example, the camera that goes in the front windshield projects both out the front and the back. So it's one piece providing two views. So they've really came a long way. And I think the price proposal is indicative of that, where we originally had budgeted $160,000. It came in half price in today's dollars. So the cost of equipment has came down dramatically.
Good move.
So,
Motion to approve as submitted.
I have a motion and a second for that request approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick, how long's your presentation going to take? You waiting on anyone? Ms. Crabb here? Okay. Can we do this now? Okay. Okay, let's do the contract award PUR 1369 website design, development, and build services. Mr. Curry and Mr. Crabb, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good. Is this your first presentation?
It is. Lauren's joining us too.
Okay,
She was in on all of this.
thank you. Okay, we're ready.
Subject before you is contract award PUR 1369, website design, development, and build services. Recommended motion, move to award the contract for providing website design, development, and build services to responsible firm of Ignition 72 Incorporated of Baltimore, Maryland, for a total sum of $97,800 and for all the other related work. In the RFP, you also have a copied RFP. This procurement generated a lot of interest, as you can see. We had 169 people download the document. We received 23 proposals. Of the proposal, we narrowed it down to 4. Of those 4, we opened up the pricing, and we interviewed 3 of those firms and found that they all were capable of doing the work. So we recommend that you award the contract to Ignition 72 Incorporated. Also, you have the proposal price sheet that shows the pricing of all 4 firms. And if Laura wants, or anyone has any questions or anything, I'm quite sure she can address those.
Okay, any questions, commissioners? If none, we'll need a motion to move forward as the recommended motion asked for. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
They're all this easy.
new website will be incredibly handy to have and helpful to staff, so thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is a public hearing concerning application for map amendment RZ 17-005. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will first have staff introduce the matter. The applicant will then have the opportunity to testify, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Public comment and testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the applicant will have the opportunity for a brief rebuttal because the applicant has the burden. The hearing and the record will then close, and no other comments, correspondence, or emails will be considered. The commissioners may discuss the issue and take any action that they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. Okay, this does require an oath, so everyone that's here today that's going to be involved in this amendment, please stand so that I will administer the oath to you. So everyone that's going to participate, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties or perjury that the responses given and statements made will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to ask staff to come up and introduce the information. Good morning. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Commissioners. Doing well. Those are just really for clarification. I will go through the presentation. They'll make more sense as I go through. So as stated, this is a public hearing on rezoning case RZ 17005. The application was submitted by BSM Big Pole LLC, and they're requesting a map amendment to the official zoning map of Washington County. The applicant is requesting to apply a rural business floating zone to a portion of land located along Tedrick Drive. It is also located in the rural village of Big Pole. The parcel itself is 9.73 acres in size. However, the applicant is requesting the overlay to be established on approximately 2.24 acres. That's the handout, the map handout that I just gave you. So the red hatched area is the area that we're talking about here today, where the applicant is requesting to apply that rural business overlay. That area, there's some other maps in there that'll show you that the area that is subject to this rezoning is currently unimproved, and it consists of an area that is currently a flat grassy meadow. Unlike typical Euclidean cases, this request is to apply for a floating zone rather than change the existing zoning. So as you're aware, the request to apply a floating zone to a piece of property does not require proof or testimony on the merits of the change or mistake rule. Instead, the application for a floating zone requires that the applicant show whether or not the property meets the intent of the floating zone and meets the specified requirements outlined in the zoning ordinance. So in order for us to, for the applicant to make application for the zone, there are 4 basic criteria that have to be met first. The first one is that the new district is not established in a designated growth area. We fully established that through the analysis process that this property is in fact located outside of all designated growth areas established by the comprehensive plan. The second basic criteria is that the new district must have safe and usable road access that meets county standards. Now, the area that's being rezoned right now technically does not have any road frontage. It is technically landlocked. Therefore, we look at what the intent of the application is, and the intent is that they are going to connect these two parcels to we're going to connect the area being rezoned to the existing parcel 34 in the front, which does have usable access to Maryland 56, also known as Big Pole Road. This is a state-owned and maintained highway, and as such, the State Highway Administration will dictate any improvements that need to be made to that entrance to accommodate changes that are made on the site. So at this point, there are no new entrances being proposed, and the assumption is that the piece of property being rezoned will use that existing access. The third criteria, on-site issues relating to sewage disposal, water supply, stormwater management, etc., can be adequately addressed. There was a site plan that was submitted by the applicant that shows existing water and sewerage facilities that serve the existing development on parcel 34. It is expected that those facilities would be extended to the area that's requested to be rezoned to handle any new development that may occur. The fourth and final criteria is that the location of the rural business district would not be incompatible with existing land uses, cultural or historic resources, or ag preservation efforts within the area. The proposed zone would be an extension, as I said before, of the existing rural business. The uses on the site are proposed to remain the same, but basically allow for some modest expansion of those services. The parcel is located within a rural village and therefore would expect to see moderate to higher level density of development, more so than you would see in other rural areas of the county. There are no historic inventory sites within the immediate vicinity of the property, nor are there any agricultural land preservation easements located within this area. So now that we have established that this application has met the basic criteria, they are also required to submit a preliminary site plan showing the various aspects of development that may occur in the affected area. That's the second piece of paper that I handed out to you. I want to point out that in the agenda packets that you received today, it may be a little confusing because you see two different site plans. Originally, the applicant did submit the application with a different site plan. After talking with neighbors and redoing things, they submitted a revised application. What you see in front of you today, what I just handed to you, is the site plan that we are going to be talking about and that will take effect as part of this rezoning as you deliberate. So I don't want the two to be confused. This is the site plan that we should be looking at. So when evaluating whether or not the proposed rural business floating zone is appropriate for the area, the Planning Commission is tasked with making a recommendation to you, the Board of County Commissioners, as to whether or not the zoning request should be approved based on several other criteria, and I'm going to go through those. First, that the proposed district will accomplish the purpose of the rural business district. According to the zoning ordinance, the purpose of the rural business floating zone is to permit the continuation and development of businesses that support the agricultural industry and farming community, serve the needs of rural residential population, provide for recreational and tourism opportunities, and to establish locations for businesses and facilities not otherwise permitted in the rural areas of the county. As I said, in this case, the property owners are seeking the rural business floating zone, and that is effectively an extension of the existing use on the property located as parcel 34. They are also proposing on that adjacent site to demolish the existing convenience store, relocate it closer to the interstate, and increase the size of that store by about 6,500 feet. I want to reiterate that is not the discussion that we're having today. They could do that at any point in time, given the fact that that property, parcel 34, is an existing rural business zoning district. All they would have to do is resubmit a site plan and go through that process, and they can do what they need to do on parcel 34. So what they're seeking to do is expand that business, at least the parking part of it, onto parcel 33 to expand their business slightly. The second criteria is that the proposed development meets the criteria identified in section 5E.4 of this article. Those are the 4 basic criteria that I've already gone through with you, so we've established that they have met that. Third criteria is that the road providing access to the site is appropriate for the proposed RB land use. Access to the site is proposed to be via Maryland 56 through the parcel that's in front of this, parcel 34. The portion of Maryland 56 between the I-70 westbound ramp to Earnstville Road is currently a 2-lane highway with wide shoulders on each side of the road. The property is located immediately adjacent to the I-70 eastbound off-ramp. The nature of the use existing and proposed for the site would seemingly be targeted to service the needs of the nearby interstate traffic. Therefore, it is reasonable to assume that the bulk of the traffic attracted to this site would be to and from the interstate. The road capacity in the vicinity of this rezoning appears to be adequate. However, the State Highway Administration, being the owner and maintainer of that section of road, may require a traffic study to be completed prior to any approval of the development, either on the existing site or on this proposed site. Fourth criteria is that adequate site distance along roads can be provided at a proposed point of access to the site. So we've already stated that the subject site is landlocked, has no direct access. However, it is assumed they will use the existing access to Maryland 65. There is no proposed access to Tedrick Drive. Fifth criteria is that the proposed landscaped areas can provide adequate buffering of the proposed rural business land use from the existing land uses in the vicinity. If you go back to that site plan that I had just provided to you, the applicant is proposing to buffer the entire length of the southwest boundary of the property to shield the expansion of the area relating to traffic movement from the neighboring residential properties. Given that there is existing vehicular traffic in this general vicinity and the addition of the vegetative buffer, we assume that this will greatly help shield the neighboring properties from light spillover. The sixth and final criteria is that the proposed land use is not of a scale, intensity, or character that would be incompatible with adjacent land uses or structures. The area proposed for rezoning is currently vacant and unimproved. It contains mostly wide open meadow that's bounded on the northwest by forest area. According to that site plan that was provided by the applicant, it appears that the area in question is proposed to expand the area related to the commercial truck traffic and provide better flow and internal movement overall on the site. Also proposed for the rezoning area is a new diesel canopy that will be slightly larger than the existing one on the adjacent parcel. Based upon historic and projected traffic trends, there is an assumption that interstate traffic will continue to increase in this area and in the county as a whole. With this assumption in place, it would be also easy to assume that support industries such as gas stations and convenience stores will also see an increase in usage. It seems logical, therefore, that the area requested for rezoning is meant to work in concert with the existing adjacent commercial use. The expansion of services seems logical and appropriate given that the requested rezoning is only for 2.24 acres, is adjacent to an existing commercial use also zoned with an RB overlay, and is directly adjacent to the interstate. In addition, the applicant has made a concerted effort to keep all development activities at the furthest distance from existing residents as possible. There is also a continuous line of vegetative screening proposed to separate the rezoning area from the existing residential development. This case was presented to the Planning Commission at a public input meeting held on September 25th, 2017. At that meeting, 6 people spoke in opposition to the proposed rezoning. Again, at their regular meeting on October 2nd, 2017, the Planning Commission deliberated this issue and voted unanimously to recommend approval of this request to the Board of County Commissioners. I have nothing further to add at this point. I'll be available for questions, I assume, after public comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now it's the applicant's turn. How are you this morning, Mr. Dival Bliss?
Excellent, Mr. Baker. Thank you very much. Jason Divalbus, 13424 Pennsylvania Avenue, Hagerstown, Maryland. Here today on behalf of the applicant, BSM Big Pool LLC. You will know the members of that entity. It is the Fulton family, longtime residents and property owners in the area. With regard to this specific property, Jill gave a very good introduction, but I want to get a little further back into the history of the property because I do believe it's important and relevant to this RB overlay request. The Fulton family purchased a 5-acre property at this location in 1998 from the Exxon Corporation. It's directly adjacent to the eastbound I-70 interstate, right off the ramp. The existing access point, as Jill pointed out, is only about 150 feet off of the exit ramp. So it is directly adjacent to the interstate. The AC&T property, as I'll refer to it, because that's where the AC&T store is located and has been an AC&T since 1998. But I want to point out that it has been operated as a gas station by AC&T or Exxon since 1968. It's our understanding that the Exxon station was there from 68. AC&T purchased it in 98. So we have about a 50-year history of this type of use at this location. The area where the AC&T store is located does currently have the rural business overlay zoning. It's about a 2.34 acre portion of the 5-acre property. So the entire existing AC&T property does not have the RB overlay. That becomes important as it sort of ties in to the adjacent property and to this request. The adjacent property is under contract to the Fulton family. It's currently owned by Mr. and Mrs. Mummert. That property is about 9.73 acres in size. Roughly, it surrounds the AC&T property or buffers it to sort of the south and the west. The subject of this request, as Jill pointed out, is about a 2.24 acre portion of that Mummert parcel, that 9.73. So when you combine the existing 2.35 acre RB of the AC&T parcel and the requested additional 2.24, you have an aggregate rural business overlay, if this were to be approved, of about 4.5 acres. Now, to keep that in context, if you add together the remaining portion of the Mummert parcel and the remaining portion of the AC&T parcel, you have over 10 acres. So we're talking a relatively small portion of the overall land mass that is being requested to be used for the RB overlay. I want to show you what I think may be a revised concept plan, put that one up here, to what Jill was referring to.
The applicant's exhibit 1.
The best way to do the board exhibit. Would you like me to put it on a chair, perhaps, so that everybody can see it? Or you want me to just hold it? Mr. Doty here can dutifully assist. I believe this updated concept plan differs from the one Jill provided to you that was originally submitted and was discussed at the Planning Commission public hearing or public meeting in September. The changes, again, are an evolution based upon the feedback received from the folks that came to the Planning Commission meeting, as well as those who didn't, as well as the Planning Commission. And the primary evolution is the relocation of the planned stormwater management area from this area here to the west, further to the south, so that it's a little further away from the adjacent neighbors here on Ernstville Road.
If you compare the two side by side, you can see that the planned vegetative buffer area here was redesigned a little bit to provide a more effective screening. I believe the previous exhibit showed this existing, more mature vegetative area coming down as part of the development and expansion of the convenience store use. Based upon the feedback received from neighbors out there, they said that vegetative buffer is really strategically located well. So if you could save it, that would be great. So that is what is reflected in this revised concept plan. Also of note is you see an extended paved area here, where previously there had been the house, the existing Mummert house was shown there. And there is no intended extension of the rural business request to include that area, but we wanted to denote that the house, upon closer examination, is no longer intended to stay. It will not be kept, and this area will be utilized in some fashion as if this site plan were to proceed with the Planning Commission. So those are the changes that are reflected. Again, I would ask that applicant's Exhibit A be considered the new concept plan depicting the requested rural business overlay area. Any questions about that before we move on from the two? Yes, sir.
This area here will be, where the house is going to be removed, will be paved?
Yes. And the use for that is still to be determined. It may simply be additional circulation area, because if you've been to the site, you know this area where traffic comes in and out is relatively narrow. It simply may be a better way to circulate traffic through the site and in and out of that access point. But again, that will be determined based upon feedback from Planning Commission as we go through that process. You can just set that. Okay, with regard to arguments in support of the additional RB overlay request, the additional 2¼ acres, as I pointed out, the convenience store and fueling stations uses have existed at this location for 20 years under the Fulton family and the AC&T brand. Again, it's our understanding that the Exxon station existed before that for an additional 30 years for a grand total of about 50 years of convenience store and fueling station at this location. As Jill pointed out, the Fulton's intention and purpose of this RB rezoning request is to expand and modernize the existing business. In particular, the plan is to completely replace the existing convenience store, which is about a 2,500 square foot convenience store, with a new mixed-use building that is comprised of about 4,200 square feet of convenience store and additional 2,300 square feet of restaurant use, which would offer freshly prepared meals and on-site dining. Both the convenience store and the restaurant uses are principal permitted uses in the RB overlay. Do me a favor. I'd ask that this be applicants, what are we doing, Kirk, 2 or B?
2.
2. This shows the breakdown in square footage of the proposed new building that would be constructed as part of the redevelopment of this site if the RB overlay were to be approved on the additional acreage. So that's with regard to the building. With regard to the fueling facilities, they also would be completely replaced. The number of fueling stations would increase from 4 to 8 for the gasoline and the automobile diesel, and from 2 to 4 for the dedicated truck diesel fueling positions. That increase in fueling positions will result in a slight increase in the number of daily fuel deliveries, but only from about 2 to 4 per day to 3 to 5 per day. The hours of operation will not change from the existing store. They will be 24/7. Due to the significant expansion and modernization of the operations, however, the number of employees will increase significantly from approximately 15 to 20 today to 40 to 45 after full development and build out of the new store. I want to go ahead and point out, because I suspect it will be a topic of conversation amongst those here today, the proposed use of this property, if the RB additional acreage were to be approved, is not a truck stop. It does not meet the definition provided in the zoning ordinance, which says that a truck stop is a structure or land used or intended to be used primarily for the sale of fuel for trucks and usually long-term truck parking, incidental service or repair of trucks, overnight accommodations, or restaurant facilities open to serve the general public. Now, although there will be a restaurant use proposed, or there is a restaurant use proposed here, the primary use is not the sale of fuel for trucks. There's no intent to provide long-term or overnight truck parking. There is no proposed service or repair facilities. There are no showers or other driver service amenities other than the restaurant, which would be open to the general public. So I can dig this one out. To further illustrate this point, I'm going to provide you with two additional exhibits. One is a comparison chart that compares the proposed use of this property here in Big Pool to 4 other properties in Washington County that are undeniably in the nature of truck stops. One being the Pilot Station on Greencastle Pike, second being the Loves on Showalter Road, the third being the Pilot on Halfway, and the fourth being the AC&T Travel Center, also on Halfway Boulevard at Hopewell.
Jason, these will be applicants exhibit 3 and 4.
Yes, sir, thank you. And just to confirm that the fourth exhibit, the collection of aerial photographs, there are 4 photographs.
There are.
So by taking a quick look at the comparison chart and then the visuals that accompany that, you can see there is a drastic difference between the concept plan shown here for the expansion and modernization of the convenience store in Big Pool versus these truck stops. The most glaring example would be the truck parking spaces, which at the lowest is 90 for the 4 identified truck stops. And in this particular case, in Big Pool, at most you would have 20. But again, they are not intended to be designated for overnight parking. Those are intended to be utilized by trucks who wish to utilize the convenience store. They need to have a place to park when they come in and out of the store. You can take a look at the other components of that comparison with regard to service and repair facilities, the driver amenities and things of that sort that are mentioned specifically in the zoning ordinance definition. And then the aerial photographs sort of speak for themselves. Again, the remaining 7.5 acre plus or minus portion of the adjacent Mummert parcel that is not subject of this RB overlay request will retain its existing zoning designation of rural village and environmental conservation. It's a split zoning parcel and essentially serve as a buffer from the properties along Ernstville Road. There is no expectation that any variances would be needed from the bulk regulations, setbacks, and otherwise, or any applicable parking or exterior lighting requirements. The full intent of the applicant is to meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance if and when we get to the point of doing a full site plan. Jill is correct in pointing out and assuming that access to this site, even after it's redeveloped and modernized and expanded, will be from the existing access point on the Big Pool Road, although the Mummert parcel does have a connection to Ernstville Road. It is not going to be used, and there is no additional access point planned for Big Pool Road. The existing point of access will be reused. Just a few other points to point out on the issue of compatibility. The most obvious argument here, of course, is the property's proximity to and direct access to and from Interstate 70. As I pointed out earlier, we have about 150-foot distance from the exit ramp, and the overwhelming majority of traffic to and from the site will be to and from the interstate. I would like to point out that AT&T and representatives of the company have met on 7 occasions with the owners of the 2 properties most affected by the extension of the RB zoning here. We've also met on 6 occasions with another family for the better part of 2017. We've worked diligently to try to tweak this site plan and tweak the proposed development in order to be most compatible and friendly with those most impacted. That's why the site plan has changed on numerous occasions, quite frankly. It has evolved to the point where we feel that the proposed concept plan to accompany this RB overlay request is in fact compatible with the adjacent uses. And unless there's any questions for myself or Mr. Doty, we'll stand down until.
Did you
Yes, sir.
mention anything on, is it Tedrick Drive or Tedrick Road?
Tedrick Drive, there will be no connection to Tedrick Drive either, if that's the question, yes.
Thank you. Well, I'll ask questions. Okay. Okay, I've seen some other people come in since we started this process. Did anyone show up late that's going to participate in this rezoning case? If so, you'll need to take the oath. So if you're here you haven't taken the oath and you're going to need to do so, would you raise your hand? Okay, moving forward, public comment time. And again, you'll be limited to 3 minutes. And so do we have anyone in the front row, any public members in the front row that would care to participate in this rezoning case? Second row? Third row? Okay, please come forward, state your name and address, sir. Good morning, how are you today?
My first time doing it, so please forgive me if I seem a little nervous, but my name is John Willis. I live at 11003 Big Pool Road in Big Pool, Maryland. The reason I'm here is in opposition of the overall expansion of, they say it's not a truck stop, but all truck drivers know it's a truck stop. I'm a truck driver, retired from trucking. Everybody knows that's a truck stop. I feel the reason they want to double it is to get the truck traffic coming east or west before they get to Breezewood or to Hagerstown. That's just my thought. But nonetheless, there's a lot of points I'd like to bring up that I've seen since I've lived in Big Pool. I've lived there a good bit. I own 60 acres on the north side of the interstate. So really, I don't have a dog in the fight other than the increase in traffic and the noise that's going to be on these on and off ramps. Right now, as it stands, you're not supposed to park on the ramps. They park on the ramps. They leave trash on the ramps. They do their business on the ramps. You can fill in the blanks on that one. They say that Ms. Dablis says that the parking spots are not for long-term parking, but when those drivers run out of their 11 hours, guess where they're staying? On that property. Federal law will not let them move once their 11 hours are up. They have to stay on that property due to federal regulations. They can't go anywhere. So they will be parking there. And while they're parking there, they're going to leave their trucks running, which for 11 hours, once one truck driver leaves, another truck driver comes in, his 11 hours are up. Guess what? We have 24 hours of truck drivers running their engines all night long. You can go to their location down there on Hopewell. You can hear them all night long. That's what they do. They want to be comfortable just like me and you. So another thing I have is the increase in possible crime that comes with truck stops or convenience stores of this level. Trucking is pretty much a transient profession with people coming in and out of this county that really don't care about the people in this county. They just want to get to point A to point B. They don't care what they do in the meantime. That's been my experience in the last 25 years in trucking. Another thing is the water runoff, the pollution. I mean, the Potomac's not but, 2,500 feet as the crow flies downhill from that truck stop. Let's say, God forbid, they have a fuel spill. I know they have stormwater runoff, but is that going to stop 10 years of trucks parking there, dripping fuel everywhere into that Potomac? It's not going to me, it doesn't sound feasible. And another thing is the response time in crime. It's 25 minutes from the Washington County Sheriff's Department to Big Pool. It's 20 minutes from the state police to Big Pool. Let's say they're coming from there to respond to a crime. By the time they get there, the crime's over. And trucking has a lot of crime involved with it. You can go down to the truck stop at nighttime, turn on the radio, and you can hear the prostitution that's going on in these truck stops. And they're doubling the increase of that truck stop in Big Pool. And I bought 60 acres out there because I love Big Pool. We're simple folks out there. It's rural. If I wanted that, I'd have stayed in Hagerstown. And, I don't think that they need to, they got 18 locations in the county now, including that one. I mean, why do we need to go bigger? It's Big Pool. It's rural. That's why we're there. I'd like to make the argument with the increase in crime and the truck parking and stuff like that. They're going to stay there. They're going to stay there all night long. They say they'll have people come out, but you can't tell a truck driver to turn his truck off. It's not going to happen. He's not going to get up. He's not going to come out. The pollution is, it's even with the new emissions out. It's just, to me, I don't think we need it in Big Pool. That's just my take on it. So, but the biggest part is the crime. It comes with a lot of crime. Truck driving is the #1 cause for sex trafficking in this nation right now. It's happening everywhere. It's happening at the one down in Hopewell. It's happening at the Loves. It's happening everywhere. And I don't want that happening in Big Pool. I got 3 daughters out there. And, like I said, I got 60 acres and I want to stay there. So I just hope that you guys see in our favor that, we want to stay simple. We want to stay rural. We don't want to double the size of that truck stop. So that's just my take. I know I went over my 3 minutes probably, but I'm sorry I talked kind of fast, but
Thank you, Mr.
thanks for
Wells.
hearing me.
Anyone else in the third row care to participate today? Fourth row? Anyone in the fourth row care to participate? Yes. Okay, just come forward. Good morning.
While we're taking our seats, may I see the exhibits that were submitted?
Is that your phone, Mr. Byers? Okay, could we get your name and address while he's going over the exhibits?
Yes, my name is Cindy Tedrick. I live at 11423 Earnsville Road, Big Pool, Maryland, 21711.
Mike Tedrick,
How are you, sir?
same location.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
If I may, I would like to elicit approximately 3 minutes of testimony from Mrs. Tedrick, and then approximately 3 minutes of testimony from Mr. Tedrick. And then I would like to take 3 minutes, perhaps a minute or so more, to present our legal arguments in opposition to this proposed 2.24-acre RB zone. Mrs. Tedrick, you've been sworn. Oh, and by the way, for the record, I have been sworn as well. Mrs. Tedrick, you've been sworn.
Yes.
And speak up and make sure everyone can see you. You're over this new podium here. Are you one of the owners of a property on Earnsville Road?
Yes, I am.
And what is your property address?
It is 11423 Earnsville Road, Big Pool, Maryland.
And you're directly adjacent to the Mummert parcel that BSM is proposing to buy?
Yes.
And is that divided from your property by a fence?
Yes, it is.
How long have you lived at your home on Earnsville Road?
Since 2004.
And have you had an opportunity to observe the adverse effects and potential incompatibilities with the existing truck use of the BSM property?
Yes, I have.
And have you had the opportunity to consider the changes in scale, intensity, and character by this proposed rezoning?
Yes, I have.
Do you believe that this proposed rezoning would be incompatible with your existing residential use?
Yes, I do.
What problems are you having today which you feel would be intensified or changed in scale by the approval of this enlargement or proposed 2.24 acre rezoning?
There would be a lot more traffic. There will be a lot more pollution. There will be a lot more tractor trailers.
Can you see this facility from your home?
Yes, we can.
And does your house sit pretty far back on your lot? Is it fairly close to the rear of the lot?
Yes, it is.
And do you have a direct view of the truck stop property from your yard and your home?
Yes, we do.
And are you able to hear what goes on in the truck stop parking lot?
Yes.
Describe the noise that you currently hear from the existing use.
We hear trucks coming in continuously. We hear trucks hitting the Jersey walls when they back into them. We hear their trucks running all the time. There's trucks that are parked up there overnight. An example was one last night. It was sitting up there idling for 8 hours. And you hear it in that house.
Do you concur with Mr. Willis's operation as the previous opposition witness on the noise?
Yes, I do.
What about visibility? What do you see when you go out in your backyard?
Trucks.
And is there any way you feel those trucks could be screened from the view from your yard and your home by either fencing as proposed by the applicant or vegetative screening, pine trees as proposed by the applicant?
I don't think anything would really help.
And why not?
You're still going to have the noise. A truck is, I don't know how tall, but a fence that is 6 foot high isn't even going to compare to a 13-foot tractor trailer. The vegetated screening now is a row of overgrown trees, and some of them are even dead trees.
Did you try planting a row of Leland cypress in your property?
We did, yes.
And given the soil types in your area of the county, did you have success with those trees?
We planted a dozen trees and we lost 9.
And of the others, how many are doing well?
One is actually doing well.
And tell the commissioners about the difference in elevation between your backyard and your home on the one hand and the 2.24 acre property and the existing truck facility on the other. Which is higher, your house or their property?
Definitely their property. It's a very high incline.
Do they have an existing fence along their perimeter now?
No.
Is there an old fence along part of that property?
There is an old wooden fence.
And can you still see the trucks over that existing fence?
Yes.
If a 6-foot screening fence were applied along that boundary line by the applicant, could you still see the trucks over the 6-foot fence?
Yes.
And if 8-foot evergreen trees were planted along the property line, could you still see the trucks well over the evergreen trees?
Yes.
Is there any exhaust odor coming from the existing use?
Yes, there is.
Describe what you've experienced.
It smells like you're on the interstate and you're traveling behind a tractor trailer.
And have you had problems with lighting and insect management in the area?
Yes, we have.
Describe that.
Especially in the summertime, the bugs are really, really bad. The lighting is very bright. It looks like a runway in our backyard at night.
And do you have trouble sleeping?
Yes, we do.
What problems do you experience sleeping?
The noise from the tractor trailers, their continuous running.
And do you feel that these adverse effects would render your property and your use of your property incompatible with the proposed rezoning of 2.24 acres at the location indicated by the applicant?
Yes.
And are you at home during the day?
Yes, I am.
And what types of things have you heard or experienced or observed during the day?
It's just the trucks constantly coming in and out. During the week, it's a lot busier.
Have you limited your use of your backyard for family or other types of gatherings?
Yes, we have.
And why have you had to do that?
Because of the scenery and of the noise.
Do you get comments from visitors to your property?
Yes, we do.
What types of comments do you get?
They're negative comments. People ask us how we can stand to live there, and they can see why this bothers us so much.
Accepting what is there existing, are you opposed to intensifying the truck-related uses on the 2.24 acre property?
Yes.
Do you feel these would have a negative effect on your property value?
Yes, I do.
No further questions of this witness.
Thank you.
Want to switch seats?
Yes.
Talk to your husband. You've already been identified,
Yes, sir.
and you're under oath.
Yes, sir.
And do you live at the same property as Mrs. Tetrick does?
Yes, I
Are
do.
you married to her?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you owned this property?
Since 1997.
And has this property been in your family before that?
Yes, it has.
And explain briefly the background.
My great-grandfather Spillman bought that property originally. When Interstate 70 took my grandfather's original house, my grandfather bought it from my great-grandfather Spillman. So it would have been in the family 100 years this year.
And from whom did you acquire your property?
My grandfather Tedrick, Roger Tedrick.
And was that in his will?
Yes, it was.
And was that a fulfillment of a promise to you as a young person?
Yes, it was.
And who built the home on your lot?
I did.
And when did you build it?
We started in 2003.
And do you have a background in masonry?
Yes, I do.
And where do you work now?
I work at the state prison
And how long have you worked there?
since '01.
And what's your property currently valued at by the assessor's office?
2005, 300.
2,200?
205,300.
And do you feel that the value of your property would be affected if this rezoning were approved?
Yes,
And do you feel that your property may be worth even more than the assessed value?
yes,
And if you were considering selling your property, would you feel it would be necessary and right to disclose this project, if it were approved, to prospective buyers?
yes.
And what effect do you think the disclosure of such an approval would have on people interested in buying your home?
The price of the property will go down significantly.
And based on familiarity with the value of your home and the work you've done to it and value of homes in the property, by how much do you believe, as the owner of the property, the value may be diminished?
In at least 30,000, maybe more.
Now, did you take some measurements from the back of your home to the split rail fence along the rear boundary of your property with Mummert?
Yes, I did.
And tell the commissioners what that distance is from your house to the end of your backyard?
From the back of my house on the left-hand side to the fence is 90 foot 8 inches. From the corner of the garage to the fence is 73 feet.
And did you also go from the split rail fence at the back of your lot to the edge of the BSM, the applicant's property?
Why, yes, I did.
And how far is that?
On the left-hand side, it's 180 feet approximately. On the right-hand side is 163 feet.
And do you concur with the comments of Mr. Willis and his opposition testimony about some of the adverse effects he's observed?
Yes, I do.
And do you also concur with your wife's testimony about the adverse effects that you've experienced?
Yes, I do.
And I think what I'd like to do then, unless there are any questions of this witness, is to address 3 legal issues that we'd like to raise in this. If I may have 3 minutes for that.
Thank you.
Jill still here? Oh, yes. We would offer these materials as part of the record as Opponents Exhibit 1. Yeah, who was asking?
I said, do you feel comfortable for?
Oh, sure. Anyone else need one? I think I just gave out my last one. Can I have your copy?
Yes.
Can we just use one of those as the...
I'll borrow hers and then,
Of course, the applicant has the burden of proof in a case like this, and from the testimony you've heard, you can easily compare the testimony of the applicant and look at the Planning Commission analysis and Ms. Baker's testimony. The only testimony regarding compatibility had to do with row of trees. And from the testimony that Mr. and Mrs. Tetrick have given, you can certainly tell that those are insignificant. If you look through these photographs, you'll see at the end, if you want to turn to the pack of photographs at the end, this is what you see from the Tetrick's front yard, the truck marked Swift. And you can see the difference in elevation there between their lot and the much elevated lot behind. And you can see the existing vegetation there. And you can see that it would be very difficult to have any effective screening of this elevated parcel from the Tetrick's property. In the next picture, there's another view of the same truck in the same location from the Tetrick's front yard. In the next picture, this is taken from the neighbor's front yard in between the houses. You can see the visibility of the truck, and you can see the steep bank there. The next one is another picture of the truck behind the Tetrick's house. The next picture is a picture of the Tetrick's existing backyard. And there's a picture of that same Swift truck taken from the split rail fence at the rear of the Tetrick's yard. And then on these next two pictures, and these are significant, you can see from this picture of the tanker truck going into the property and the blue truck that I photographed in the other pictures sitting there in view, that all of the truck traffic currently goes up by the nearest part of this property. And I would suggest to you, looking at the maps and graphics that are submitted, that this property is probably the most affected of all the residential properties in the area of the proposed 2.24 acre use. And the last picture, you'll see, if you can find this picture at the very end of your packet, you'll see that this truck wasn't even at the edge of the lot. There's a whole width for a truck closer to that, to the edge of the property. And you'll also see a fence in this picture, or some vegetation, and there's a fence in the earlier picture along the property line. These are current efforts have been ineffective to screen this, and it would seem to me that if you're planting a row of these trees, this site plan isn't shown three-dimensionally. What you end up with is a row of trees down at the bottom of that bank because there's no other place to plant them, and that's where they're depicted on this proposed site plan. So the applicant, looking at the grounds that we've listed 3 grounds. The first is that the application requirements have not been met. The contract of sale for the property is required under the ordinance to be submitted, and a meets and bounds property of the description of the 2.24 acre property is required, either separately or on the site plan. And I note from the site plan submitted and the revised site plan, the meets and bounds description are not shown. And this is important because Mr. Davalbus has indicated to you on behalf of the applicant that they're not rezoning the entire Mumford parcel, only a portion of it. So your ordinance requires a separate meets and bounds description so that that can be properly mapped in the map comprising a part of the ordinance. The second point is this is a truck stop use. Truck stop use is not permitted in the RB zone. By the definition, the use of this 2.24 acre property is a truck stop, and here's why. The definition of a truck stop, along with the separate accessory uses that can accompany it but aren't required to accompany it, is that it's for the sale of fuel for trucks. And if you look at the 2.24 acres and forget about the area that we're not talking about today, if you look at the 2.24 acres proposed for rezoning, the only uses on that parcel are, one, a diesel fueling area, which the applicant has described as being for trucks. Diesel for cars is provided separately, and an area for truck parking and truck circulation. So if we have only sale of fuel for trucks and truck maneuvering and parking, whether it's long-term, short-term, overnight, or temporary, this meets the definition of truck stop because the 2.24 acre only has one use, the 2.24 acre parcel, only one use. There's no convenience store on it. There's no convenience store proposed for it. There's no auto gas proposed for the 2.24 acres. The 2.24 acres is exclusively for trucks and for fueling of trucks, and that is definitionally a truck stop. Now, truck stops aren't included in the RB column for permitted uses in this proposed zone. Table 3.3.1 establishes that. And finally, I can't emphasize this enough. Our testimony this morning had to do with whether the use would be incompatible. If it's incompatible, it cannot be approved. And for 3 reasons. First of all, Maryland law says that compatibility is the key issue in a floating zone case. These are different from your other types of zoning cases. In fact, floating zones are allowed in Maryland only on the basis of compatibility, and I've included a page of articles. Narrowing that down to the local ordinance, your local ordinance requires findings of fact by the commissioners in any amendment that this use is compatible with the existing uses in the vicinity. And finally, and specifically, not only is this RB zone conditioned upon 4 criteria that must be shown in order to grant this rezoning, it says that these criteria include that the proposed use would not be incompatible, meaning it has to be compatible with the existing land uses in the vicinity of the proposed district. Now, this doesn't include historic uses or other natural resources or protections. This ordinance, which you adopted, says would not be incompatible with existing land uses in the vicinity of the proposed district, the vicinity of the 2.2 acre district. I believe we've shown in the exhibits that you can go through at length, and I hope you do, given the limited amount of time I've been provided. I believe we've shown that it would be absurd, it would be arbitrary, it would be unwarranted and unsupported for you to find compatibility with the proposed use of this 2.24 acre property and the existing use of the Tedrick's home. The ordinance also talks about scale, intensity, and character. These are the requirements in your ordinance that have to be part of the Planning Commission's recommendations. They're absent because there is no doubt that this is an increase in scale, it's an increase in incompatibility, and it's a use of a proposed character which would be wholly incompatible with this use. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you, Mr. Tedrick. Anyone else in the fourth row care to testify today on this rezoning? The back row, we have anyone in the back row that would care to come forward and testify? Okay, did I miss over anyone here today that would care to testify regardless of the row you're in? Okay, Mr. Dival Bliss.
Thank you. Just briefly, quite frankly, I don't even know where to start with all of that, but here's where I'm going to start, is that sort of the irony of everything you just heard with regard to the opposition testimony is that there are complaints about the existing use. The existing use is and has been for a very long time adjacent to the Tedrick's property. And it's ironic because it's a by right use. That convenience store use is permitted by right in its current zoning designation of RB. The other part is that that use predated the Tedrick's home. Now, they may have owned this property for a very long time. According to Mr. Tedrick, he's been very familiar with the property for over 100 years, in his family at least. This use has been there longer than their home, which means when they built their home in 2004, they built it knowingly adjacent to the existing use about which all these complaints and all these concerns are raised. And I want to provide you with, I guess it would be applicants number 5, Mr. Downey?
Yes.
Which would be another set of aerial photographs that go back to 1998, I believe. Sorry, 1989 is the earliest one. And if you start from the back and move forward, you will see the evolution of development in this area and the uses of these properties that we're referring to. The 1989 does not have very good resolution. I think the earliest photo that has the best resolution is 2003. So I would draw your attention to that one. It's page 3 of what I've just given you as applicants number 5. It clearly shows the existence of the AC&T convenience store and clearly shows only one home constructed as of that date on Ernstville Road. That is not the Tedrick's home. If you flip forward to the one dated 2009, you can now see 3 homes on Ernstville Road, one of which is the Tedrick's. And you can see very clearly from those aerial photos, as well as the concept plan exhibit, that the Tedrick's home, right here, abuts the area occupied by the existing use and the existing zoning, which is right here. The request to extend the RB zoning is this new area here, which if you extend the repeated reference to the existing use as well as the proposed use as a truck stop is, I mean, it's simply not even accurate. If the existing use were a truck stop, it would be the subject on a daily basis to a zoning enforcement action. That simply is not the case. With regard to the ineffectiveness or claimed ineffectiveness of the proposed additional buffering because there is a height difference, I would argue, and I would ask Justin to argue probably more eloquently than I can, that the height difference between the two properties actually will make the proposed vegetative buffering more effective because the existing separation creates additional height to the proposed vegetative buffering. So you have a natural benefit to the change in elevation. Justin, can you elaborate briefly?
Justin Doty with Frederick Seibert & Associates, 128 South Potomac Street. So the intent of this vegetation is to be as close to the improvements as we can get them. They're going to be in a higher elevation than the back of the residential properties or even our own property line. If you stand at the bottom of a hill and you look up a hill, a 6-foot tree becomes a much taller tree, thereby blocking obstructions or thereby blocking things in the background. To make that comparison, if you were to stand level or even be looking down on a subject property, the improvements would be more visible, okay? So the point is we want to place them, and we'll rectify this at the site plan level, vegetative screening at the top of the hill, thereby being a more effective screen from the residential properties.
That little, on that map, that little leg that comes down, no, out to your long finger like. Yeah, what road's that right there? That's Earnstville Road? So this property does include that little section of, and does it go out and touch the Earnstville Road?
It does.
Okay.
But it is not planned to be improved.
With regard to lighting, what you have is the classic scenario where you have an older development that does not have to comply and did not have to comply with the currently applicable lighting regulations. The proposal to extend the RB and to develop according to that would trigger the application of the new lighting regs, which probably would be a significant improvement over the existing condition. The issue of compatibility, not only isn't it absurd, but I would draw your attention to the language specifically in Article 5E of the zoning ordinance that says with regard to businesses that existed in the rural area at the time the rural business overlay zoning was adopted in September of 2015. The properties that existed at the time they were given the RB overlay in 2015, those properties are specifically called out by the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance says that those businesses need not take any action to continue operation. Such existing uses are viewed as compatible with the character of the rural area, and their continued operation is deemed consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan. The AC&T convenience store, which has been there since 1998 under the Fulton's operation and 30 years prior to that, Exxon, was there in 2015 when that property was zoned RB. That means that use was deemed compatible by the zoning ordinance. The proposal to extend the RB and to update and modernize that very use it is not only not incompatible, but has been deemed compatible by the county's own ordinance. Unless there's any additional questions, I won't take up any more of your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, any comments, questions? Oh, hold on just 1 second, please. Okay, the public hearing is now concluded, and now it's commissioner's opportunity.
The existing buildings right now. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So what I guess I'm hearing is that
Yes, sir. They would just need to update a site plan.
And the other areas, if you don't mind, a little bit more pieces of information here. On the part that they want to, I guess I'm going to say, more overflow, parking, whatever, that cannot be done today. Is that correct?
I would divert that to the county attorney's office. That part has not been purviewed.
And I see the dotted line for the truck.
Yes.
The truck
Yes.
parking, et cetera,
Yep.
What the disputes about, but I don't believe the intention is for the tractor trailers to come down into this. So the question is, without this so-called truck parking, could this be added today along with what is there existing?
They can intensify the use on the existing site without doing anything to the new parcel.
They can, including this area.
Well, I guess there'd be some site plan requirements that they'd have to get approved.
I mean, that would be for hard truck parking and so forth, right? I mean, that's not.
I'd really have to look at the ordinance. I'm really putting you on the spot. Do you know of anything in the ordinance, Tim, about parking in like the EC or? Okay. Yeah, I'd like to defer that question and come back and respond with a little more accuracy than we can at the moment. We have had parcels in the past where the parking has spilled over property boundaries, and that's not really an issue. What we would like to review, and I'd like to go over with the zoning administrator, is whether or not that would be a permitted use in the environmental conservation, or excuse me, the rural village district where they're proposing to do that. As far as that being considered as part of the meeting today, I don't believe it would be, because that is not part of their request. Their request is to rezone that section to the rear. As far as the parking facility on the rural village, that would be through a site plan process. I don't believe they would need to rezone the property, but should they need to rezone that, then that would have to come back through another public process.
But you're assuming that on rural village is permitted parking?
I would assume, but I can't tell you that for sure. I would really like to discuss that with the zoning administrator. Yes, yes, we will absolutely respond to that. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners?
I have,
Go ahead. Have to be fast.
if I heard correctly, I believe the current site allows for parking of 10 tractor trailers and it would be increased to 20. Is that correct? Based on this picture here, where's the designated parking for the trucks?
Currently, or
What's proposed? What's being planned based on this site plan?
I'd have to look at that site plan. Yeah, the site plan doesn't show the area of parking. Do you have a current?
If you look at
It's on that one there.
If you look at this one, Wayne,
Okay.
you can see right behind Edwards, as they were talking about, you see the white area, it's sort of faint, where the existing parking is right now for the trucks.
What I would say,
The new parking would be?
yeah, what I would say is that the intent would be, currently, if you're familiar with the site, the way the trucks come in is they come off of Maryland 65, and then they pass behind the existing building there that's the convenience store. They go up a small hill there, and then they pull into the area where there's existing parking and the existing canopies. I think what their proposal would be is to extend that up the hill and sort of do a U-shaped around the perimeter, and then the parking would be in the middle of that U-shaped bypass, basically around the property. That's the intent. That would be where the excuse me, the up to 20 parking spaces would be.
far as the size of, I guess, fueling opportunities, how does it compare to Love's and the Pilot?
I would probably, again, point to the applicant's exhibits to show you sort of a difference between those facilities. I believe as Jason testified that typically with the larger true truck stops where we're talking about where your primary purpose is to bring the trucking facilities or the trucking community in and use facilities such as showers, repair services, sleeping accommodations, whatever, you're looking probably anywhere between 100 and 120 parking spaces. And quite frankly, in a lot of places, that's not even adequate. The Pilot at the Greencastle Pike is, that's always full. And yes, people do park. They do park on the shoulders because they have nowhere to park. So that's becoming an increasing problem in Washington County, is the lack of places where these truckers can park because of federal regulation, and because we are located in the intersection of two primary interstates that crisscross this nation. So I would sort of defer that way to say the true truck stops, they have a lot more parking facilities available because they have a lot more amenities available for truckers to stop there and stay. The fueling opportunities, I would say, I think the Pilot has 8 or 10 fueling stations. I'm not sure about the Loves. I haven't been out there lately. But I would say there's somewhere in that vicinity of probably 8 to 12 fueling.
How many is being proposed for this site?
4.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. And the commissioners will bring this back later to decide their position. And
We will investigate that question, Commissioner Myers, and respond to all of you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll put it back on the future agenda for commissioners to reach a consensus.
Thanks to everyone that participated. Good luck to both. Now let me find my agenda sheet here. We were just swamped with papers, maps. Okay, we're back to this one. And we are at, consensus discussion for text amendment, RZ 17007. Ms. Baker? Now I have it.
Again, good morning. For the record, my name is Jill Baker. I am Chief Planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning for Washington County. As stated, this is an issue being brought back to the commissioners for discussion and possible consensus regarding text amendments to the Washington County zoning ordinance. These text amendments pertain to several articles in the ordinance, including Articles 3, 5A, 5B, 5C, 7A, 8, 9, 10, and 28A. The purpose of these amendments is to correct and clarify and add some new language to uses relating to boarding facilities, tourist homes, and boarding and rooming homes, bed and breakfast, country inns. Second portion of this amendment deals with the location of banquet and reception facilities, specifically as they are permitted in the urbanized areas of the county. As you may recall, the first part of this that relates to the boarding and rooming facilities, we had a request to delete obsolete terms like tourist homes, add new terms such as a country inn, and then clarify the difference between various terms in the ordinance that relate to resident homes, tourist homes, roomers and boarders, and so forth. The second part of this, again, to refresh your memory, dealt with the location of the banquet and reception facilities. Currently, they are permitted as special exception uses in our rural areas, and it has been brought to our attention that there may be some areas within the urbanized area that may suit these types of uses. As they become more popular as the unconventional wedding or event centers, specifically because of usually some specific detail to that property. It could be the historic nature of the property. It could be, the home is a very historic home, or just its location in general. So that's a really quick, dirty summary of what we're talking about, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding this at this point in time.
Okay, any questions, comments from the commissioners? Okay, now this says consensus on changes to the proposed text amendments.
Yes.
But this is, what's being presented today is what was presented originally, correct?
Yes, there's nothing that has changed since the public hearing.
Okay, so what we're looking for is a consensus on the changes of the proposed text amendments, which were presented originally, and that's what we will be voting on. And so if we support this, then you could bring the document to.
Yeah,
are we supporting?
You can either come to a consensus, or you can approve the suggested amendments to the ordinance.
Okay, so I want to, okay, so I guess first we need to see if there's support for the original presentation.
Yeah, if you recall, there was some discussion regarding whether any setbacks should change in regards to a particular use. I think planning staff has looked at that issue. Their recommendation is that the proposed setback remain as was presented and as was subject of the public hearing. So their request at this time is for you to adopt the amendments as
originally presented.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you have different direction, then we'll certainly follow that direction. However, it may require another public hearing if there's a substantial change to what was presented.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners? So we'll go back to looking for a motion for what was originally presented. So we'll need a motion for that.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the original proposal. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Okay, so then you'll prepare.
So yeah, so that was a motion to approve the requested amendments to the ordinance.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you don't have to bring anything else back.
I'll get it for your signature.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, can we just take a minute recess? Well, we'll need longer than a minute, several minutes.
But yeah, they closed for
Okay. Are you gonna turn us back? Hold on. We have to wait. Okay, welcome back. We're down at the last item, the Maryland Theater request. Mr. Slocum, if you would provide information, please. Or
Yes, sir.
want to do your response?
Yes, sir. Quick summary, report in brief is that the Maryland Theater first presented a grant request to the City of Hagerstown Mayor Council and to you, the Washington County Board of County Commissioners, in a joint session, and that was on October 10 of 2017. And that was a brief and albeit vague, it was a request for approximately $3 million. More definitive was a request in a December 17, 2017 letter to the county commissioners, which was presented more formally on December 19 before the holiday break, and that was a regularly scheduled meeting with just the commissioners. The purposes of this presentation is to make recommendation, provide some background to the commissioners upon the 3 requests that were in that formal letter of December 17, 2017. And just for the commissioners' knowledge and in the interest of transparency, the county administrator, as does the city administrator, work as a ex officio member on the Maryland Theater Board. Okay, so request number 1 in the December 2017 letter is that the city and county grant $3 million, and as it was stated in the letter, allocated between the city and the county as you deem necessary. Some background first, prior to recommendation from staff on that, is that the county has a longstanding commitment, as you well know, $4.5 million to the urban improvement project called the UIP. That $4.5 million has been in place for some time and has not changed. $500,000 of that 4.5 has long been obligated to the theater design, which is now nearly complete and ready for bid. Hence the necessity of the request from the Maryland Theater under the December 17 letter. The city as well, which is not listed here, but the city as well has contributed $500,000 to the design of the Maryland Theater, which is already obligated, just as it's been side by side with the county's money. And just for clarification, the permitting of this project, because it is in the city, welcome back, Commissioner Barr. The permitting of this project will be with the city of Hagerstown. It is not with the county. The county will not issue the UNO. The city would do that. On this item number C in the background, the county is administering in-kind procurement. That is both inspection and project management to some extent throughout the project, even up through the design, while the theater board and theater staff has been the lead without question. The county has and staff have been there to provide service and see that the governor's money, which is $5 million toward the theater, is the obligations of that criteria are fully met, so that governor's money is not subject to loss. The in-kind of that can roughly be approximated at $250,000. That's just for background information. It's not accounted anywhere. It is an estimate. If anything, I think it's a very conservative or low estimate. D, $4 million are the same, and this is very important. Of the $4.5 million, the county has already obligated $500,000 to the theater, and bills have been paid toward that design. Though not complete, bills have been paid. Of $4 million has been obligated to the Board of Education, Washington County Public Schools, for the BISFA, Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, building improvements, and that is under the MOU that's in place today. So that $4 million is spoken for today, quite clearly in the agreement. The county acting as a assembler of information and attempting with all the other stakeholders to proceed with this project, has stayed tuned to the Board of Education's needs, and that's where E comes in. The Board of Education has received additional state funding and is now planning a 5th story to the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts building since the MOU was executed. Slightly different. At one time there was a bridge, and that's how the MOU is drawn up. Now the school intends to have a 5th story in lieu of the bridge. The Board of Education will receive bids upon BISFA in the spring of 2018. The date is not final. April-May timeframe has been discussed, but it clearly will be in the spring. So the commitment to the Board of Ed is not known entirely, although it could be up to $4 million. Discussions with the superintendent have indicated that we will know that either by the Board of Ed to this board or by staff to this staff. We'll make it very clear what that commitment, what that match will need to be. And there are a number of dynamics. Number one is the bids that come into the Board of Ed for that building. Number two is the actual IAC money, the match required for the IAC money. There are very strict criteria for that, as you can imagine, and then additional overhead costs. So there's a number of variables to be determined to meet the county's current commitment to the MOU. And as I've said, item G, upon receipt of the BISFA bids, the Board of Ed and/or staff will advise the county and/or staff of the matching funds required. So with all that, the recommendation, and in speaking, following the direction of you, Mr. President, to get together with staff here, discussions with the Maryland Theater and other discussions with other stakeholders in the project, the recommendation is that upon receipt of the match required by the Board of Ed, the county consider the remaining funds, if any, for the theater up to $2 million. And as of yet, that's an unknown, but it will be known in the spring of this year. So request 2 is a little more straightforward. The county forward $5 million committed to the theater from the governor's funding in the form of a capital projects grant agreement. Background there, the governor, state of Maryland, visited the city, the county, Washington County, committed $7.5 million over 5 years to the UIP project, which is, in general, mentioned in the grant. Specific grant language was the Maryland Theater, the Board of Education for BISFA, and University System of Maryland. Jim has already brought forward to you specific documentation for proceeding with that grant, and we are well on our way still, and we'll be submitting those soon. The funding schedule for that, to be clear to everyone, is over 5 years. So that's fiscal years 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Fiscal years 18, 1.5 to the Board of Ed. Fiscal year 19, $0.5 million to the Board of Ed. Fiscal year 20, $0.5 million to the Board of Ed. Fiscal year 21, 2.5 to the Maryland Theater. Fiscal year 22, 2.5 to the Maryland Theater. So this, in the governor's budget, that is the funding criteria, and it had been stated previously and has been longstanding that the Board of Ed would receive the funds and Maryland Theater would receive the funds in accordance with that schedule. Each year, we must be careful to note that each year, staff and the county will have to submit for this application as we are doing this year. So next year, as we've done this year with $1.5 million, we will submit next year for $0.5 million, and the following year for $0.5 million, the following year for $2.5 million, and the following year for $2.5 million. We have a high level of confidence that governor's money that is committed in the budget would come through regardless of any potential changes at the state level. So the theater portion of the governor's funding will be available in fiscal years 21 and 22, in addition to $5 million to the theater. As I mentioned, $2.5 million of the above has been dedicated to the Board of Education. The county will administer the theater's portion of the governor's funding. Now be very careful to note that does not mean that we are administering the project. We are certainly managing the project as far as the grant application to see that the project is bid correctly, that the documentation is in place so that it can be submitted to the state so that the money then comes back to the county for reimbursement. Per the capital projects grant agreement approved by the county, reimbursement of the governor's funding will be submitted directly to the county. So with the request to fund $5 million, which has happened in the past, for funding of grant money of other projects and other parties involved in other projects, is a recommendation that the county commit to the request immediately, make a firm commitment to the Maryland Theater. Release of the funds would be consistent with the subrecipient agreement, will be pending satisfactory review of the theater project budget, and there's two key times of that review I would suggest. One is that the funding budget be considered prior to advertisement and also after the bids come in. And at that time that the funds be released if it meets the board's satisfaction. And request 3 of the December 2017 letter. That request is to work in collaboration with local banks to each fund 50% of the private pledges raised by the Maryland Theater. This amount is currently projected to be $2 million. Private pledges are being paid over a 5-year period. Background on that, the theater has collaborated with private lending institutions to finance private contribution commitments such that pending commitments are available to advertise the project. So the Maryland Theater Board, as I understand it, wishes to have evidence that all the funding necessary for the project is in place before advertising. They have thus requested evidence from the county or supporting those pledges. The current board has not forward funded private campaigns, nor is the county in a position to collaborate with private lending institutions for third-party project. So it does not seem as though in through discussions that it would be appropriate to fund private contributions, certainly immediately or over a period of 5 years. So the recommendation to that request is, while it is understood that the private funding campaign will meet success, and it is going very well and continues to receive significant pledges, the county is not prepared nor secured to participate in the funding of private campaign contributions. Now, in the fiscal impact, there is a statement that say the recommendations above will have no fiscal impact beyond the MOU in place. Naturally, forward funding $5 million does have some impact. From talking to our Director of Budget and Finance and our Deputy Director, who are here today to answer any questions you may have, that amount of funding, which had been discussed in the past, even slightly more than that, will not affect the county's bond rating and will not cost the county significantly. So that's what's meant by that statement. And as far as alternatives go, naturally the board is free to make any combination, modification, rejection of the above recommendations. However, in the review of this, working with all the stakeholders, not just recently, but up to this in the past several months, almost a year, obviously the decision here is very important, as well as the the technology that almost hit you in the head. So thank you for hearing that out, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. The Maryland Theater representatives are here as well as our budget and finance folks to help. We'll get that fixed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Slocum. Okay, comments, thoughts, commissioners, information, or if none, we need a motion as to what we're going to be moving forward with today.
So 20, 21, or
22.
21 and 22.
21 and 22, fiscal years, 21 and 22.
and then we also match the, on receipt of the Board of Ed, that we match up to $2 million of what's now.
Of what's remaining after the board takes their cut. Or what's needed, after the board gets what's needed. Okay, so the motion would be forward fund $5 million and then decide, or not decide, provide up to $2 million if remaining from what the board needs to do their project. At no interest, correct. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second for that motion, recommended motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Thank you. Congratulations. Good luck. And I really want to say thank you to our administrator, Mr. Slocum, for taking all of the commissioners' thoughts and putting it together and coming up with a viable plan.
Well,
Commitment.
if I might say, the commissioners in unison and unanimity have approved this, so thank you all, and thanks to the theater board. And I'm sorry, Benito wasn't able to be here today.
Yes, sir, we're going to give you that opportunity right now.
Thank you. Benito could not be here. As vice chair of our board, I would just like to express to each of you our thanks for your support for this project. We have a ways to go yet in order to start this. Our board at the theater is committed to finding that way. We will work hard to make this possible, and I want to thank you again this morning for your support.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yep. Yes, sir, Mr. Bowers. Thank you, and your volunteers, they are the major contributors to the Maryland Theater, my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you to the volunteers.